Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's professional development. I'm Jess Boudry. Today we're talking about grading policies, everyone's favorite topic. In all seriousness, we have a lot of good learning today, so I appreciate you joining me. Those of you who are joining us virtual, I appreciate you being here. Those of you who are here in person, also appreciate you taking the time to be here. So thank you for joining and for furthering your own learning. First things first, we're going to take a look at our agenda for today. We're going to first start with our inclusive welcome. We're going to kind of build your awareness a little bit and think about some standards-based learning. We're going to talk about what's going good. We're going to also say, let's go. Let's put this into practice slowly. We're going to talk about what a purpose statement is, and then we'll have our intentional close. So overall goal today is really just building our awareness of effective grading practices, some standards-based learning, and then identifying the purpose of grading. So that's what's on our agenda for today. All right, so our inclusive welcome. We're going to do what's called an in their shoes activity, and I want you to see if you can maybe figure out what that means. So I want you to think of one of your most recent domino days. What's a domino day? That is where everything has a domino effect, and everything's going wrong. One thing after another, constant domino effect. That's a domino day. What typically pushes you over the edge on those days? What's the last domino to fall? Think about on those domino days, like where you're at when you finally just tip. And then what was or is something that makes those days better? Have a conversation with somebody around you. This could be, let's go with your blues friend. So that could be whether you have jeans on. It could be something, if you like the same music. It could be, same clothes, same music, whatever that looks like for today. Find someone you can. If you're at home or joining us virtually, you can just kind of write down your answers to yourself. All right, I'm going to bring you back. Hopefully you had some good conversations about those domino days. We can all relate to what those look like and have those. That's not something that we get to remove from our lives. But I want you to think about, you had a domino day. But now imagine your boss sends you an email after this domino day has just been a day, and they tell you that unfortunately we're going to have to cut your pay in half for the day because you did not submit your timesheet on time. How do you react to that? How do you feel? I don't know about you guys, but I am immediately enraged. What do you mean you're going to cut my pay in half? I was there the whole day. I was doing my work, right? Especially on a domino day when it's just what else could go wrong? Okay? Think about, how do you feel about your boss? Now, as your principal, right, you could say it. You'd be like, I'm not trusting that person anymore. You've just lost all respect. I don't want to talk to them. I don't want to respect them. I don't want to do anything for them at this point if they're going to cut my pay just because my timesheet was a little bit late. So I want you to think about that. How many times, and this isn't something I want you to answer, but how many times have we taken points off for things being late from students? That affects their grade. How many department levels take a certain percentage off after each day it's late? How many times have we had the conversation of, you need to turn it in because? That's something that we're going to talk about today as a grading practices, or current grading practice that maybe is just not effective anymore because it's not applicable to our lives. So we're going to talk about some of the research behind that and why some of those outdated grading practices we're going to kick out the door, and the new ones that we're going to welcome. So let's just build some awareness, okay? First off, giving zeros. That's a current grading practice. When a student doesn't turn something in, 0. The semester crusher. That's one that kind of gets me, where that's where you have an assignment that is worth so many points or is weighted so drastically that it doesn't matter how well you do throughout the semester. If this is the one that you don't do well on, grades toast. Focusing on the average. How many of you have ever been graded on a bell curve? I just had this conversation with the building secretary at the high school, and she was talking about how her son loves that grading practice because he's typically on that edge of sometimes being in that top tier and sometimes being on the cusp of going down to that average. I was the kid always in the top tier and always did the work and put the effort in, but then the ones that weren't were still getting that grade, and I never felt like that was fair. So those are there, right? These are ineffective. These do not promote student learning. They do not promote positive relationships with our students. They do not promote or show what we're looking for students to show. A 0 doesn't show me if they've learned or not. One assessment out of 20 doesn't show me if they've learned or not. Looking at an average score or just looking at the students who are an average student doesn't help me. Here's what does. I'm going to move myself this way. Allowing retakes and redos. A student doesn't show you the first time that they can do that skill or show you that they understand the content. Okay, try again. If I asked how many of you in here have ever failed your driving test, maybe I'd be surprised. But what's interesting is that most of you are driving. You've probably retaken it. That's okay. Failure, and this one's tough for some people, failure is the preference. We do not learn when everyone does everything right all the time. When students fail, when we fail is when we learn. So we want them to fail so that they can see how to get better. We also want to turn this idea of 50-50, like students need to meet us halfway, to a 60-40. For the ones that maybe we're still doing the 60%, we're jumping in and saying, hey, I'm going to help you, even though you maybe don't want it. I'm going to help you because you haven't developed that skill yet. That's my goal as a teacher, or our goals as educators. Maybe for the student that's sitting in the back going like this, maybe it's a 90-10. I'm putting in 90% of the effort and they're putting in 10. These are effective grading practices. This is something that we can help with. We have Ken O'Connor, who talks about 4 different conditions for effective grading to happen. It's consistent. Your grades are accurate. They're meaningful and supportive of learning. If we're doing these ineffective strategies, we're not going to allow them to, we're not supporting learning. So we do not have that opportunity to do that. Ken O'Connor says, when we can change from this, what can I do to improve my grade, to what can I do to improve my learning, that's when we're going to see true success. So what are we going to do? We're going to dig into standards-based learning. And you can read that definition from the, I believe it is called the Educators for Reform, and the website, it allows you, we'll kind of take a look at it on the reference page. It really allows you to see different definitions of all these educational based definitions. But this one really talks about this learning cycle where we identify our standards. I've been preaching to you about standards the whole time. You know it was coming. Standards are at that essential piece of what we do. We take a look at what they are. We focus our instruction, our assessment, our formative, informals, everything we do is standard based. Then we focus on how our students are going to learn that skill, how they're going to look at the content, skills and content. We break down standards, just like in our teacher clarity. Then we ask them to complete those assessments. We give them options to do so because not every learner fits that one size fits all. And then we take a look at that data, analyze what are we doing, or what do we want our students to know, standards. What are we doing if they don't know it? We're analyzing data. How are we reteaching? How are we going to assess them? How are they going to show it? How will we know if they know it? And then what do we do if they already know it? So standards-based learning cycle is PLC work. Standards-based learning cycle, PLC work, is our teacher clarity work, our guaranteed viable curriculum. Everything fits together, which is why it makes sense. So thinking about that, you're already doing so many good things. We've had conversations about learning targets, identifying standards. Your rubrics are all standards-based. Our teacher clarity is all standards-based. It's backwards designed from the standards. So I put this quote in by Abraham Hicks of, when you focus on the good gets better. So just because we're moving into something else does not mean it's something else. It's a building block on top of what we're already doing, and we still are focusing on those good things while making it better. So, what we're going to do, I'm going to task you with creating what's called a purpose statement about the grades that shares your why behind your grading. So, I want you to think about this. This was an idea that came from On Your Mark. It is by Thomas Guskey. Currently reading it myself. This text really breaks down the philosophy behind grading. And one of those things that it asks you to do and that he challenges you to do is to create a purpose statement. So I want you to. Just you individually, what's your why behind grading? And if you were to create a statement that said, this is the reason behind grades, what would it say? I gave you some questions to ponder and to think about, like, how is your information about a grade being communicated? What's the intended goal of that communication? What's in a grade? And then how is it used? So think about your feedback. Think about your rubrics. Think about all these things. I still want you to think about it because those are heavy topics. But they're all aligned to what we're talking about in our teacher clarity, so why would we do anything different? So, first things first. Grading practices. We have some currently that are maybe really effective, and we are doing some of those things. We have some room to grow. There are some ineffective ones that need to be kicked out the door. There's some effective ones that we want to keep or that we want to build. Second, standards-based. Everything goes back to standards-based learning. Everything. Our standards are essential skills. There are good things. You are doing them. I'm not saying you're not, right? We're celebrating the good. We're focusing on, yes, the good is happening, but we still have room to grow. And last but not least, our purpose statement. Think about the why behind grading. What is your why? How do you, and why do you grade? Is it just because we tell you have to? Or what do you think about when you give a student a grade? That's your goal, is to create a purpose statement. And in the spirit of fun, we're going to make a competition out of it. So, if you have stuck with me this long, people here in person, yes, you have obviously stuck with me unless you got up and left, which is sad. But if you still joined me virtually, thank you for being here. Send me your purpose statement via email by 4 p.m. tomorrow. And I will enter your name into a contest to possibly win, may or may not be a gift card to our local coffee shop. And if you're not a coffee drinker, we can talk about alternatives. But I want to hear and see what you believe in when it comes to grades so we can all collectively be on the same page. Because one thing that Guskey will say is that if your staff collectively cannot get on the same page about the purpose behind grades or report cards or just the learning purpose, we'll focus on too many and we won't be able to make a meaningful change. So 4 p.m., tomorrow. Here are those references I was telling you about. Lots of good stuff in there. Oh, it's the Glossary of Education Reform. My fault. But it is there for you, and I would highly, highly recommend taking a look at them to help you create your purpose statements. So again, 4 p.m. tomorrow, send me that purpose statement so I can enter you into that contest. I always appreciate you being here, and thank you for continuing to make our students and our school a better place. Have a wonderful evening, everybody.